empowering is the health of any effective leader. If you're a leader and you don't empower anyone, then you're not healthy. Hey, welcome again to the Amisi Leadership Podcast, where we are so passionate about leadership because we believe if we can sort out the question of leadership, whatever we are, we'll start seeing improvement in our spaces. We build people with high capacity tools to drive societal transformation. And we want to invite you to be part of this journey so that we can be able to lead and change the narrative around us. I believe, just like the great leadership guru John Maxwell says, you don't need a title before or after your name to be a leader. You can lead where you are. You can exactly lead where you are and start influencing people as a leader who wants to make a difference. We've been talking about empowering on this podcast. Again, I want to thank you for those who've watched in, listened in. Please continue sharing this podcast to your friends. Subscribe and let us know where you're watching us from. Then we'll be able to keep in touch and be able to, create awareness or get you to know the next time that we're dropping new videos as far as leadership is concerned. We are talking about empowering, and we've been able to define what empowering is. So we've challenged you and said, for you to be an effective leader, then you've got to learn how to empower those that are around. You can't be effective as a leader if there's no one you're empowering in that sphere, that space that you're leading. If there are people around you, make sure you empower them. In fact, we said empowering is the health of any effective leader. If you're a leader and you don't empower anyone, then you're not healthy. We said there's a difference between an empowering leader and just any other leader. Empowering leaders delegate authority, delegate responsibility, they delegate power. Empowering leaders don't think like, I've got to make every decision. They don't just delegate tasks or positions, they delegate that together with authority so that people can grow in their decision making. People can be able to, start believing in themselves because they're able to make decisions as far as, the delegation that you've given them is concerned. I want to challenge you. If you're going to be effective, start to empower. And last week, we were talking about some of the critical steps that are needed if you are to be an empowering leader. And we started off by telling you, very important, spend time. You can't count yourself to be an empowering leader if you don't spend time with those that you're developing. And as you spend time with them, you start to allow them to start to interrogate your blind spot. They get to learn that, what flows through your blood is red blood, just like every one of us. That leaders make mistakes. Leaders get it right sometimes they get it wrong. The people you're developing desperately need to learn that. Don't you just project perfection. No. Let them know you've been on a journey, so they get to interrogate your blind spot. They get to learn from your hits and your misses. We've been calling you and saying, good leaders are vulnerable. Vulnerable leaders are authentic. In fact, in this generation is looking for authentic leaders. Authentic leaders who will be open enough and courageous enough to admit where they've gone wrong and to also be able to talk about the successes that they've had in their leadership journey. So you've got to spend time. And spending time, we said it's not passive, it's got to be active. And not just that, you've got to allow them to strategize for vision, invite them and give them space to start contributing as far as especially the methods of delivering the vision you have for yourself and for your organization is concerned. And then we said, you've got to model values to them. When they spend time with you, they get to see how you respond, you react in good situations, difficult situations. They pick lessons. And in leadership, there are more lessons caught than taught in a class. Model values. Don't just teach values, model what you want to see. We then told you, for you to be able to empower properly, don't just spend time with them, but train them. You start to intentionally taking them through a training process that is step by step. You found them, you got them when they are at this point A, and your goal is, how do I get these leaders from point A to point C to point D, where they become better and better than how they came in? They came in as rough diamonds. They're getting out, and they're coming out as very smooth, precious metals. Why? Because you've learned how to empower them. And we said that training has to take into account three critical things. One, there has to be a question of education. What information do they need for them to be better? There has to be that question. What information do I avail to them? How do I send them to spaces where they can pick information that they didn't have that will better them as leaders? That's a question of education. There has to be a question of equipping. What skills and tools do they need for them to function better and to execute the responsibility that I've given them in a much, much better way? It's a question of equipping. And then there has to be a question of experience. What platform do they need for them to be able to put into practice the things that they've learned so that they can thrive, so that they start to even believe in their own potential as leaders? It's a question of experience. And I told you last week, listen, make sure that the education bit is 10%. The equipping bit is 20%. And the experience bit is 70%. Don't just put people in a class and they don't have anywhere to go and put to practice what they've learned. In other words, create more and more platforms of experience, because people learn better when they do. Not just what they hear, they learn better when they do. And that's why we emphasize that the experience bit has got to be 70% and the others 10 and 20% respectively. Be an empowering leader. If there's anything I can challenge you to, you want to start seeing a difference, a change in the people that you're leading, the people that you're developing, go all out and say that I'm going to be an empowering leader. You see, today, this week and next week podcast, I want us to work on the third critical step. I know in the first I told you there were two steps, that I'm adding you a third one. So the first one was time. The second one was training. The third one is temperature. The third one is temperature. And we're going to look at temperature this week and next week. Creating or modeling a temperature for empowerment in our organization. How do we develop, how do we model a temperature that supports empowerment, that makes feel people empowered and valued and have the freedom to work, they own the vision, they feel they have a sense of belonging in that organization? You've got, as the leader, you've got to set the temperature. Now, that's not set by any other person in the organization. The leader has got to set that temperature. It's like driving a bus. I mean, a leader, you're a driver. You're not a passenger. You're the driver. You determine how fast the bus will go, how slow it's going to go. You can't get into some challenges in the middle of the journey or some traffic jam and you say, I'm going to disembark. The passengers can disembark from the bus if they feel they're getting late as a result of some traffic jam, but the driver can't disembark. The driver has to think creatively and find out, how do I move this bus from where I am to where it's supposed to be? A leader is a driver, and the driver sets the tempo. The leader sets the temperature. In other words, what I'm trying to talk about is, how do we set an empowering culture? How do we model an empowering culture where we are at and in our organizations? That's the work of the leader, because culture starts from the top, not from the middle, not from the bottom of the organization. Culture starts from the top. The culture you set is the culture you will see. Let me put it this way. The temperature you set is the temperature that you'll see in the organization, is the temperature that will be felt by everybody who walks into that organization. So if I were you as a leader, I would work as hard to set the temperature or the culture that I want to see in my organization as a leader. And even go a step further and say, I would want to set and model an empowering temperature or an empowering culture in my organization. The culture that I set, people will feel empowered. Culture is so key. Culture is so important, Because building a healthy culture, an empowering culture in the organization is the key to achieving success. You can't talk about success if you don't go back to asking yourself this question: what culture am I developing? What culture am I modeling? Because if it's a healthy culture, it is so key to achieving or fulfilling the vision that you have. And you will need to have a complete paradigm shift and a model change in the part of the leader if you're going to build or develop or model an empowering culture. You see, nothing affects the vision of any organization like culture. Nothing. And many people have agreed. In fact, the great leadership expert, Peter Drucker, once said, culture will eat vision and strategy for breakfast and for lunch. Culture will trump any vision or strategy that you come up with for your organization. Interestingly, when it comes to culture, it's not something that is tangible. You can touch it, you can feel it. You can't touch it, you can't see it, but you can feel it in the organization. You can smell it in the organization. That you walk into an environment, you just need to spend a few hours with a few people working there, listen to them talk, see how they're doing things, and you can be able to tell the kind of culture, whether it's an empowering culture or it's a disempowering culture. I want to challenge us today that as a leader, would you move out in that space you're leading? It could be 5 people, 10 people, 20, 30, 100 people. Would you intentionally set out to build an empowering culture and not a disempowering culture? Because culture is so key. It is so key to your organization. If it's not done well, then it will affect not just the vision, but the results of that organization. So what is culture? Culture is the personality of a company or an organization. Culture is made up of what people believe in, the traditions that people hold on to, the values of that organization, the attitudes that the people have. All these put together come from the culture that has been set up in that organization. These are the things that, govern or dictate the behavior of the people in any organization. Your belief, your traditions, your values, your attitudes. They dictate the behavior, how people will behave, especially the people that you're leading. The culture of the organization, by the way, starts with the behavior of the leader. It starts with the behavior of the leader. Because if the leader exhibits a certain behavior, that's what people catch up with. I'll give you a good example. If you're a leader and you talk about timekeeping and you come on time and you stick to it, people will come on time. But if you're a leader and you tell people, come for a meeting at such and such a time, and you come and you always come either 30 minutes later or 40 minutes later, and when you come in, you have all these excuses about what happened and the reason why you couldn't be there early. Let me tell you, you bet within a few weeks, within a few months, the people that you're leading will have caught up with that behavior. And you start seeing them coming in late and having all manners of excuses. Where did this come from? It comes from the leader. The tone, the temperature, the culture that the leader sets determines the behavior of the organization. In other words, what you do repeatedly is what people pick up. In fact, I dare say this, that the organization will be what you repeatedly do as the leader. As the leader. If you keep your word, they will keep their word. If you come up with all manners of excuses, that's what will be felt in the leadership. If you're accountable, you finish your work on time, you keep deadlines, the people, you bet, will pick that up and they will start doing that. I need to understand that culture is not vision. It's different from vision. It is so different, but it's so critical to the fulfillment of vision. In fact, I think it is one of the most powerful things in any organization. I told you earlier that Peter Drucker once said, culture eats or trumps vision for breakfast or for lunch. Listen, you can have one of the most powerful vision, one of the most powerful strategies any organization can ever have, but if you do not take care of the temperature in the organization, if you don't take care of the culture in the organization, then that vision will not see the light of day. Why? Because culture is so powerful to any organization, to any leadership. Culture, I told you, is the personality of the organization. I mean, it determines where people will be enthusiastic about work. They own the vision. Are they just there for the bottom line? Are they just there for the pay at the end of the month? How are they treating one another? That's what culture does. And that's the work of in fact, an organization will take up the personality of the leader. That's what happens. An organization will eventually take up the personality of a leader. Culture and vision are so different. You see, vision focuses on outcomes, but culture focuses on people. Culture is about people, how people are treated, how you value the most important asset of the organization. That's what vision and culture is all about. You see, a strong culture will get people excited about work, will get people pumped up, to churn out results. It stimulates, it stirs up hope in that organization. That's what a strong, positive, healthy culture will do to the people. And on the flip side, it is the same. A weak culture will not stimulate the people. It will discourage the people. It will get the people not pumped up for work, and you get to see it with how they work, how they carry themselves along, how they treat your clients. That's what comes across when you think culture. Culture is so important. If it is toxic, you will feel it. If it is toxic, there'll be battles and fights, people stepping on each other, undermining one another, because the culture is toxic. When it's healthy, you see people supporting one another, people working in teams, helping each other to achieve results, and making sure that the vision of the organization sees the light of day. I told you, the interesting thing with culture is that sometimes it is not what you see, it is not even what is written on the walls of the organization. It is how are people treated? How do they see things? How do they respond to issues? What are the values that they have? How do they address problems when problems emanate between one another? Is it cutthroat? Do they fight? Do they pull each other down? Is there too much, are there too many cases for your HR to keep on, sorting out because of issues between the people that you're leading, between your workers? Then there's an issue of culture here. I need to understand that if you're going to be an effective, empowering leader, then you've got to not only spend time with your people, not only train them, but you've got to set the tone, set the temperature, model an empowering culture in the organization. Don't forget this. This is what we've said. The culture of the organization is the personality of the leader. Because culture starts from the top. Before you blame the culture on employees, you need to question, could this be the culture of the leader? Because the leader drives, models, and builds culture. Go set out to be an empowering leader and build a positive, healthy, thriving environment where people feel a sense of belonging, where people understand, listen, here you're valued. You do that, the bottom line will be achieved. You don't build culture, listen, it does not matter how good a vision you have, how good a strategy you have. Listen, it won't see the light of day. Your vision, the fulfillment of your vision, the fulfillment of your strategy will be determined by the kind of culture you build in your organization. I want to challenge you. Build an empowering culture. Empowering leaders keep their tabs, have their fingers on the culture of the organization. If this has helped you, this teaching is helping you, like I said always, please share it. Next week, we'll be looking at the benefits of an empowering culture, the benefits of building the right temperature in the organization. So share this podcast with your friends, subscribe, Let us know where you're watching us from. If you have any question, please put it on the chat. We'll get to see it and we'll be able to answer it in the next episode. But subscribe on Spotify, on Google Podcast, on Apple Podcast. Subscribe. Go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and share this to as many people as possible, especially people who are in a leadership space that this teaching will help make them better and better leaders. See you next week as we work on the benefits of an empowering culture. See you.